it's going to be who can get hungry and quick, because you don't have time to feel sorry for yourself about not making it out of the quarters.
This is USCHO Weekend Review. And here is your host, Ed Trefzger.
Welcome back to USCHO Weekend Review. We're going to talk about the NCAA regionals. And Jim, you and I were watching the selection show and getting kind of excited about what was looking in front of us there. And I think these are going to be just terrific games. I mean, I'm not just cheerleading here, and it's always fun in the tournament, but there's something really compelling about each of these regions. And so we're going to start region by region. We'll start out with the Albany Regional, where the number one overall seed is Michigan. The matchups are Michigan and Bentley and Minnesota, Duluth, and Penn State. So what do we look at each one of these teams? What's going well? I mean, obviously things are going well for Michigan. They seem to be able to come back and turn on the Jets in the third period in any game.
Yeah, I think that, this Michigan-Bentley game is your typical 1-16 game that we've seen every year, and it does match up another Atlantic hockey opponent against the number one overall seed. We saw it last year. This is a tough game. Boston College barely survived a late goal to even advance past Bentley. I don't put anything past the number 16 seed here. It is really hard to win hockey games. We know that in general. I don't care if you're the one team or the number 16 team. That's a tough game. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Derek, but I think that Michigan will be prepared. They know how tough an opponent Bentley will be.
And they played us. They played Mercyhurst. They played Atlantic hockey teams, and they had some struggles against us the first night. Mercyhurst, not so much, because that's before they started their second half kind of run a little bit on the Rick Godkin retirement tour. But I think that they're going to look at the history. They're going to look at the fact that Boston College struggled with Bentley down the stretch. This last year. They struggled with them and had to score late. The one thing I think is going to be the difference is Bentley keep the game as tight as possible, as long as possible, to make Michigan feel pressure and make them start wondering. They've got good defensive structure. Michigan's got good offensive structure. And freshman goalie and Lucas Fedden, he needs to be up to the task. But yes, this is going to be a typical 1 versus 16 where Michigan may feel some pressure at some point.
Well, let's talk about the other one, Minnesota, Duluth, and Penn State. Duluth came pretty close in that championship game and it did have a comeback against Denver to force overtime. Penn State got upset in the Big Ten playoffs, but they are a dangerous team. What's this game going to be like?
I mean, two really big name players going against each other, and Max Plant, and throw in Zam Plant in there, and Gavin McKenna. These are three of the players that we're talking about in the national scoring race right now and in the Hobie Baker race. So I look at the styles, the contrasting styles, a really upbeat, fast Penn State team. They want to play with pace against a Minnesota Duluth team that is heavy, in your face, hard checking, but they can really get up the ice as well. I think this is going to be a fast-paced game. Do you agree with that, Derek?
Yeah, I do. And I think one of the things to watch is the atmosphere. Penn State, I was at the Women's Frozen Four on Friday, and Penn State was in it, and they took Wisconsin to the brink. That energy that crowd can bring, especially in a neutral site, could be something that really propels a team to victory. And you look at hosts, those are going to be big. But I will say this, fast paced, up and down, not worrying about turnovers. This is going to be freewheeling hockey. And I think this is why ESPN picked this one up right off the bat as kind of one of their feature games of the day.
And certainly a lot of Penn State alums and fans will make the trek to Albany to help out attendance in that arena. Let's go out west to the Loveland Regional. And that has Western Michigan taking on Minnesota State, and the host team, Denver, will have Cornell in those games. Let's take the host matchup first, Denver and Cornell. What is this clash of styles, I think a clash of styles, going to be like between these two teams?
That's a hard question for me to answer because I feel like Casey Jones has changed the style of Cornell a little bit this season. I think Denver's still Denver. They get up and down the ice with pace, but Cornell feels like a better skating team. The little bit that I've watched them, and I haven't seen enough of them this year to really talk overly educated about them. But I've watched them play, and I feel like they skate almost better than a lot of the recent Mike Schaefer teams. Those teams were built on structure. They were built on heaviness. And I think that there's still some of that identity in Cornell, but I like the way that this team moves up and down the ice. I think they'll give Denver a really tough game here, even though it's on home ice in essence for Denver.
Yeah, I agree with you. And when there was a little bit of a pause there, I don't know if we were waiting for each other to answer or we were thinking about it, because I think the stereotypical tight defense Mike Schaefer teams aren't as prevalent with this Cornell team, like you said, as possible. And I think one of the things that we're really going to need to watch is goaltending, because I think Cornell can suffocate the game, because the DNA of Mike Schaefer is still not out of there. If they can get up and silence that crowd a little bit, I think that that's a possibility. So this may be one of the host upsets. Maybe. Who knows? Cornell has not advanced to the Frozen Four in forever with Mike Schaefer. Is Casey Jones one to push him over the edge? So I'm really interested to see this game, but I don't know. I just the transition from Mike to Casey is a big talk in this game.
You know, we like to say that there are going to be upsets, or at least one upset of a 4 seed versus a 1 seed, and it didn't happen last season. But what about this matchup? Defending national champions Western Michigan take on Minnesota State. Is this a matchup where a good game plan and great execution could bring an upset?
I think it is, Ed. And there's one reason I really kind of look at this one. This is going to be all about which team generates energy. This is going to be a building that's not going to have a ton of life in it. You're talking about an NCAA tournament game between Western Michigan and Minnesota State, played in Loveland, Colorado. It's not going to be the marquee matchup of the day in that building. So I think that you're going to have to find a way to get excited to play in the game. I know it's an NCAA tournament. That shouldn't be a challenge. It sounds like a stupid statement to make, but the reality is that both teams have to get up for this game. And if Western can't get going right away, listen, I get it. They're the defending national champions. That's a little pressure at first, but they've also played a lot of games in great atmospheres. They're going to have to develop their own energy when there isn't much atmosphere in the building.
Hampton versus Alex. That's my key to the game in this one. I think goaltending is going to get you through this one. Defending national champions don't have an easy path, because even if they do advance, they may have to play in a hostile environment, and they may have to play a team that just eliminated them a couple weeks ago. So I think that this is going to be an interesting regional, but watch the goaltending matchup, because that somebody's going to get goalied at some point, and these are two legit goalies that can do it.
Well, let's go to the Sioux Falls Regional. 3 teams that did not win their conference, though they were all at the top of their conference in the regular season, and the upstart Merrimack. So you got North Dakota and Merrimack and Providence and Quinnipiac. Let's start with North Dakota and Merrimack. I mean, North Dakota, it's a 4.5-hour drive from Grand Forks to Sioux Falls. So, you know, it's going to be packed with Fighting Hawks fans. But then you got Merrimack, who, to use the overused term, is playing with house money here. They've got to feel confident. They got to feel really good about themselves, and probably not feeling intimidated by a North Dakota team that has been terrific this season under Dane Jackson.
Yeah, I got to say that Scott Boric has done a fantastic job of getting his players to buy in on the "we are not respected" mantra. They watched the documentary on Jim Balvano, the Survive in Advance, the ESPN, I think it was a 30 for 30 that they did. And Scotty Boric talked about how he had seen it a few months ago, then made his team watch it before the start of the Hockey East tournament. And, Survive in Advance became their mantra, and they're surviving and they're advancing. They know that there's no room for any losses. There hasn't been for a while now for them. They just keep it going. I think that this is a real tough test. North Dakota has gotten things back under Dane Jackson. They're really playing good hockey. I know that they didn't make it to the final game in the NCHC, and that might be disappointing, but this is a scary North Dakota team. Merrimack has everything, in front of them, but it's a tough opponent.
When I looked at this, I thought this was in Manchester. I thought this was an East Regional site, not a. I know that you guys dissected that on bracketology, but obviously the fan favorites, UND, big crowd. They're going to fill the Denny Sanford Center. It's going to be loud. I don't know if the Cinderella of Merrimack is going to survive past this. This is just too good of a team. They're going to be hungry after losing in the NCHC playoffs. Hats off to Merrimack. Great job. If they can climb this mountain, who knows where they're going to go, because they're going to have all the momentum in the world. So who knows if they can get through. If they can get through this, you might see Merrimack in the Final Four, but I'm not putting the house on it.
Well, one more matchup in that region is Providence and Quinnipiac. Two Eastern teams fly out to Sioux Falls, which is sometimes beautiful this time of year and sometimes is like an ice box. But what do you see between those two Eastern powers?
Yeah, I listened to Nate Lehman's comments, after the selection show, and he said that this feels like a youth hockey tournament where you have two teams that are located a few hours from each other playing, on the other side of the country. This will be interesting. Two teams that won their respective leagues in the regular season and then faltered in their quarterfinals. Quinnipiac losing twice, Providence losing the single elimination game to Merrimack. It's who's going to get back on the force and play this weekend. That's what it comes down to. Who hit the reset button best? I know Providence had some injuries. They'll welcome some players back if they can get healthy. They really were missing some of their key players against Merrimack. So if they're healthy, that's a big bonus. I don't know the injury situation with Quinnipiac, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's some stuff there. So it's all about who hits the reset button better.
100% agreed. You just took my point. It's going to be who can get hungry and quick, because you don't have time to feel sorry for yourself about not making it out of the quarters. Who's going to be ready to go? They should both be rested. Nobody's got an advantage of playing last weekend. They're both. Usually when you have an off week, it takes you a period to get into your game. It takes you a period to get ready. And you've seen that with teams that have been off. They just couldn't wrap it up. These are two teams that have been off, so there should be no advantage there. Look for whoever gets to their game quicker out of having a break to have the most success.
Well, let's look at the Worcester Regional at the DCU Center. Michigan State and UConn and Dartmouth and Wisconsin are the matchups for that one. And, UConn just coming off of that 50-shot loss to Merrimack in the title game. Michigan State upended in the Big Ten tournament. So a little bit of reset for both of those teams. This one should be a good matchup, but this one smells a little like upset to me too.
Yeah, I don't disagree here. I think, when I make my bracket out a little later this week, I'll probably pick Connecticut here. And that's not being disrespectful to Michigan State. I think they're a great team. But I think UConn has the horses and they're playing well. This is a matchup really that comes down to who's going to find the offense. Both goaltenders are really strong. Obviously, Augustine is the bigger name over Muslik, who's been good at UConn, but hasn't been a national name for a couple of seasons now. I think it's whichever goaltender probably plays the best in this game. We find that team on the better side. But I do agree with you, Ed. If I had to say that there's one number one seed that I think could go down, Connecticut playing not too far from their campus against a Michigan State team that should be hungry. I still like UConn here.
Interesting. Because I think Michigan State might have been the most consistent team all year. Maybe Michigan, but I think that they didn't have any downs. Not getting to the Big Ten finals, obviously, is a big deal. But that's really interesting because I think they've got the goaltending. Trey Augustine, this won't phase him. This stage won't phase him. Porter Matone. I just think that Michigan State might have been the most consistent team all year. So I would disagree with that, but I could see where you're coming from. And I think that Michigan State has been so close the last couple of years that this might be the time.
I'm just thinking a little bit about UConn's loss to Penn State last year, too, in the tournament, and what kind of a game that was. But the other part of this matchup, as we get down to the wire time-wise here, is Dartmouth and Wisconsin. First time those two programs have ever played in their history. It's the 28th NCAA tournament for Wisconsin. It's the 5th for Dartmouth. Their others were 48, 49, 79, and 80. So you've got a lot of experience as a program up against really no experience in the tournament for Dartmouth. This is going to be a fascinating one to watch.
I think the last time Dartmouth was in the tournament, their goaltender might have been Bob Gaudette, who ended up coaching the Big Green and retired a few years back. So that shows how long it's been. This is just an awesome game. It's great to see new teams that we haven't seen in a long time in the tournament. Dartmouth, it's been so long. What a season it's been. But I'm going to go back to the Reed Cashman, Rand Pecknold connection. Here it is, another Rand Pecknold disciple who's in the NCAA tournament, bringing a team in really quickly after taking over that program during COVID. So congratulations to them. But this is a Wisconsin team that we've been saying it all year. Are they good enough? Do they deserve to be here? They had so many stumbles, but they also had so many big wins. What does Mike Hastings do with his team heading into this game, this whole region? They probably feel like this is their year to win. This is their region to win. They know Michigan State. They're playing a Dartmouth team without a lot of experience, a Connecticut team that's never been to a Frozen Four. I'm sure Wisconsin feels like this is their region to win.
But I think what that is, what Wisconsin team are we going to see? We know what we're going to see from Dartmouth. What Wisconsin team are we going to see? Are we going to see the team that was lights out at the beginning, or we see the team that we were questioning whether they're going to make the tournament? So I think there's a question mark in this game. How is Wisconsin going to come off of an off week? We just talked about off week. Are you going to be able to get to your game quick? And then are we going to see the Wisconsin that's the good one or the not so good one? And Dartmouth's hot. They've been consistent.
By the way, can I throw in one little note here? Dartmouth's win over Princeton was the win that clinched Wisconsin's place in the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, they were sitting there watching that. I mean, it was Merrimack who prevented Augustana from getting in, and it was Dartmouth that allowed UConn to be in. So it really got down to the wire on all of those. Well, that's a look at all the regions and what's coming up with that. Games start on Thursday. They're Thursday, Saturday, and Friday, Sunday. You can look at the bracket on USCHO.com. And also go to USCHO and get your buddies enrolled in our Pick'em contest and see if you can win valuable prizes, or at least the pride of winning and the admiration of your fellow competitors. This has been sponsored by the NCAA Division I Men's Frozen Four, April 9th and 11th in Las Vegas. Visit ncaa.com/mfrozen4 for tickets. Like us and subscribe on YouTube at youtube.com/USCHO. We'll be back next week after the regionals with a wrap-up of what happened and maybe an analysis of how each region did with things like attendance and atmosphere. For Jim Connelly, for Derek Schooley, I'm Ed Trefzger, and this has been USCHO Weekend Review.